One of the primary messages that we like to get across to some of the people that experience our home here at the Titanic Lifeboat Academy is the sense that we're all in this together. You just can't show up at a potluck and expect everybody else to feed you. Okay, that's what self-sufficiency is all about. We're all interdependent on each other. We can't do it alone. This isn't a survivalist homestead or anything like that. We're trying to include everybody into our lifeboat, but they also have to be willing to contribute something.
If we had had a place like this to come when we were first starting out, we would have been here in a second. To have somebody help us and someone who already knew how to do these things. What did you say the only way?
The only way to win is not to play.
Is not to play. To play the game is to put your money in a 401k, which is like putting it in here, right? At this point in time, Wall Street is not a safe place. But putting your money in people, you're not playing the game, but you're building a community, and you're building resilience for the future.
This is Peak Moment. We are living at a peak of human innovation, information, wealth, and health. But we're also at a peak of population and consumption, with rising temperatures and declining resources fueled by cheap oil and gas. Peak Moment Television, bringing you examples of positive responses to energy decline and climate change through local community action.
Hi, welcome to Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. I'm sitting upstairs in the cozy Eco Loft at the Titanic Lifeboat Academy in Northwest Oregon. I'm with its co-creators, Karen Black, Christopher Padden. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
And thanks for toasting us with a nice warm fire. So, we'll want to describe what the Eco Loft is and everything, but let's start with this very unusual name. What is the Titanic Lifeboat Academy and why? Go, Karen.
Okay. Christopher came up with the name, but basically the Titanic went down, but the lifeboats don't. The lifeboats are a way of avoiding the collapse of the system that we're in at the moment, that we're all experiencing. In other words, the collapse of Western civilization, the collapse of the economy, all the different problems that are going on. We don't have to go with them. We don't have to be there. We can find another way.
So, even though the Titanic is going down, this is a lifeboat. Your place is a lifeboat, and what you do. So, it's both a place, but it's a learning center. Christopher, you call it a hands-on learning center. What do you mean by that?
Well, we have an internship program where we invite people who want to sort of take a test drive of what it's like to live on a homestead type experience. And part of that is not only hands-on experience, but also we offer a 3-week internship that provides also a what we call the lifeboat course.
So let's start there. What's a lifeboat course? What do you cover in a lifeboat course for folks?
I'll defer to my education director.
Well, that depends on the person, partly. There are some core things that we go over with everyone, like what are your skills, what are transferable skills, what kinds of things are you able to do, like carpentry or sewing or something that you maybe haven't done for a long time, didn't even think about, but we need to bring out again that would be good to contribute to the community. Things like that we do with everyone, but the course is tailored to the individual, where they are, what they need to learn, and it's the context that we're living in is basically what the course is about.
The context.
What is going on? Yep.
The context. So what are you having people pay attention to in the context then?
The global context, the economy, the way the system's set up, how money works, how energy works and what's happening with energy, what's happening with the climate. We talk about all of these things, and some people bring different things to the table. They've had a lot of experience in one area or in another area. So we're not going to go over that again then if they already know it, obviously. We'll start with where they are. And then we move forward. Given all of this, what do we do now?
Right. I mean, that's going to be the critical. It seems to me, you mentioned earlier, it's like people get that information, and then there's a hump they have to, tell us about that, they have to cross before they take action. Well, tell me about that.
Well, it's a lot of trying to overcome a deer in the headlight sort of reaction, especially to like people who finally grok the peak oil issue that we're facing. or even the economic situation that we're facing. So we try to help them over that hump so that they can take that sense of helplessness and turn it into more of a proactive stance, where we do a skills assessment, say, okay, what can you do? We do a life assessment. What sort of a context are you living in in your own home community, your family, things like that, and what sorts of tools are available to you to help your friends and your family and your loved ones moving in a direction where you would actually build your own lifeboat, either for yourself or your loved ones. We have a saying that, about how it's so important to be able to put on, like they tell you in the airlines when you get on an airplane trip every time, put your own oxygen mask on first, because if you don't, you're no good to yourself or to the passenger next to you if you're lying unconscious on the floor. So that's something that we try to emphasize.
It's not about personal survival as much, and if you don't survive, you're not much good to anyone either. But it's about working with your community and how can you help others in your community. And you can't do that unless you're coming from a position of strength or at least stability. And so you need to provide that for yourself first. If you don't do that, then someone's going to have to do it for you later. And if you don't take care of your own needs, then basically you're taking resources later from people who couldn't prepare for their own needs. So if you're able, you should be doing that.
And what you're saying is those who are waking up to the situation have a responsibility, maybe, is what you're saying,
absolutely.
To build their lifeboat.
Right.
Which isn't just a solo paddle here. This is you and your family or your community. Yeah.
Right. It's how can your piece fit in with the people around you and help, and what can you bring to the table?
So you're doing a skills assessment, a life situation assessment,
and a plan. What are you going to do? Where are you going to be 2 years from now? Where are you going to be a year from now? Where are you going to be 6 months from now? What's the first step you're going to take toward that? So it's a very practical. You leave with a very practical set of ideas of where you're going to go next and what you're going to do the minute you get home and that kind of thing.
So this is this is the lifeboat course.
Right.
Now, do people come here to do the lifeboat course? Do they do it online, or how's it work?
They can do it online. We've done it online before with different people.
We've had students as far away as England.
A couple of students from England, actually, and a student from Quebec, and just all over. Who have either come or done it online, and it's a planning process. It takes a little longer than 3 weeks online. It takes as long as you want it to take. And when people are doing it online, they may do it more slowly, but that's fine. And we're here to network with them afterward too. We don't just abandon them.
I would think that ongoing feedback is something that's going to be valuable.
Right. And if they're able to take on an actual internship and spend at least 3 weeks with us, the process is obviously a lot quicker. They get a full immersion experience in the process, not only with their life planning, but also getting the full experience of what it's like to actually take responsibility for your own care, providing for your own food, and like what we try to do here at the Lifeboat Academy.
Give us a flavor for what the hands-on part of that is doing, as well as the lifeboat course.
Well, we do full animal husbandry. They learn how to take care of chickens, which is actually more complicated than one might think. We also have 2 milk goats that provide all our dairy. We have a horse that provides transportation for us and also working in the fields. We have a full vegetable garden that they might, depending on the season, there's always activity being done in the garden. There's always some kind of a building project, repair, maintenance. There's chores, feeding of the animals that have to be done 3 times a day. So they kind of, it's a unique experience for people, especially someone who's coming from the city that hasn't taken care of animals on a farm-like situation. It's a lot of responsibility. There's a routine that has to happen.
It's a different cycle to
it's a different cycle,
rhythm. Weekends? What weekends?
Yeah, I was like...
Every day is like the next.
The goats have to get fed every day,
right? Don't know weekends.
No weekends off.
They know morning and evening, but they don't know weekends. So that's a different different thing too. But one of the things I want to stress is that once you get started doing something, actually doing something, not talking about it, that's fine, or networking or whatever, those are all nice pieces. But once you're actually doing something in your own life and learning how to cope with living on your own and being self-sufficient, you feel better. A lot of the fear that we all have, we try not to have the fear, we try to not talk about the fear, whatever, but anyone who, looking at where we are in the world right now, anyone who's not afraid to some degree doesn't have a pulse, I think, It's scary. Humanity hasn't been here before, but once you start taking steps to do something, the fear goes away because you're doing something about it, and that's all you can do. You're doing what you can do. And that's what we work on. That's what we're teaching.
And I would guess with that increased sense of sort of security and capability, as you get some skills, some sense of how it'd be possible to live more locally. I mean, more and more cities are letting people raise chickens, and so some of the skills they'll do here will fit back in their own lives.
It's amazing what the animals teach you.
Like?
It's amazing what the animals teach you. About rhythms, about seasons, about relationships, doing things that you never thought you'd be doing with all of your years of college or whatever. Giving to others and sharing, and community, just working, living not just for yourself, but for all the people who live with you. We call all of our animals people. All the people who live with you and depend equally on each other and you.
In a way, of course, that's getting us back to our roots. I mean, that's how humans will live most of their time on the planet is in community with all the other peoples, including the not human peoples. I want to also describe a little bit about what the setting is here. I mean, we're in the Eco-Loft, but would you give people a sense of your infrastructure, your energy sources, your water sources, your use of materials, recycle, all that? Give them a flavor.
Master builder.
Okay, Mr. Master Builder.
When we found this place about 6 years ago, it was a house that was built about mid-70s, all electric, and situated on 3 acres. Since then, we've spent a lot of time retrofitting it. We felt it was more in taking of a conservative lifestyle. If we, instead of trying to build everything brand new again, that we would try to convert an existing residence into something that was more sustainable.
Which a lot of people need a model of that, because we're all not going to be able to build new places.
That's exactly true.
And this was not a very sustainable place. It wasn't built that way.
Okay.
But if we could turn this into a sustainable homestead, you could turn almost anything into a sustainable homestead.
So what'd you do?
So we changed out all the windows in the house to more energy efficient windows. Added a whole lot more insulation, and then addressed the major energy user in any household is heating water. So we first did, and the most cost-effective way to manage that in efficiency is to convert that over to a solar thermal system. So all the water here is solar heated, and then we added a solar electric system, a 4.4 kW solar electric that is net metered. We feed back into the grid when we produce more than we need. And then we later became a beta test site for Southwest Wind Power's new SkyStream wind turbine, which has turned out to be a nice little addition as far as being complementary to the PV. Being the Pacific Northwest, we have a lot of cloudy, rainy weather. It's very dark. And during the winter time, when the PV system, the solar electric, is not producing as much, it's complemented by the wind that we get here. And boy, do we get storms here. We got some pretty nasty ones.
Water and wind.
Yeah. So, so then we added other systems to enhance our sustainability. It'd be a water catchment system that we have on the barn here, which we built the barn. That was not here originally.
That's a lot.
And added a solar system to the barn, water system. What else did we do?
Well, what else did you do? Christopher built the barn pretty much by himself.
And you have of course, with your gardens and your animals, you've got a lot of composting happening.
Oh, yes.
And
We recycle and compost
Wow.
almost everything. We have one of the small garbage cans that most people use for a single residence or whatever. It gets picked up once a month for us, and it's not always full. And we have construction waste. We still have construction waste, you know, wrapping
Which
for things that you
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
get out of getting. So we've cut down our garbage and everything else that we use by 80%. I'm the bookkeeper, I keep track of all that. So 80% across the board, electrical use, waste, consumption of everything from the outside.
So what you're showing is that the goal of reducing our carbon emissions, 80% by 2050, that goal,
It's
it's
totally possible for individuals. I don't know if you can talk corporations into
Sure.
that, but that's another subject.
sure.
But people can definitely become independent. It's not about, I mean, yes, we want to save the earth, but we personally are not going to do that ourselves. What we can do is become independent enough that, again, as the ship goes down or as times get harder, we're not pulled with that. We still have enough stability that we can be of use to the community. We can help others, and we can show them that you don't need that. We're not living, we're living more simply, but we're certainly not living, what are they calling
Austere?
austerity?
No, I would
We're not
say,
living-
having visited your house and here, this lovely spacious eco-loft, you know, that you're not scratching at poverty here, that it's
No.
comfortable and spacious and pleasant without being over, ostentatious or anything. It's very,
It's
Very
a
nice.
simpler, more sane, we feel, way to live.
and thus more stable, as you
It's
were
much more
saying.
stable and much more in tune with nature and with the cycles and the times of the year. Well, I remember when Christopher planted garlic and we had a wonderful harvest one year, and the next year we had no garlic, and I had to realize, you mean we don't get any garlic until next year? But that's
And this is the
what
common
happens.
way that it was, not more than 50 years ago. We didn't have food flown 1,500 miles from all over the world, so you could pick it up at any time of year in the grocery store. So we're adjusting our eating habits to the seasons now, and so that
Yeah.
we get
And once
used
you
to
make
that.
the adjustment, it's fine. It's the space right here, getting mentally from one space to the other is, I think, the hardest part, Jeanette. It's not how you're living. We're living fine. It's the mental picture we all have of how we're supposed to be living versus how we are living, and making that shift from how you're supposed to live. Well, who's telling you you're supposed to live that way? If you pan back from that or zoom back from that, what you're getting is the people who are telling you how you're supposed to be living are making money from you if you live that way. Interesting, isn't it?
Yes, of
Interesting.
course.
And in that way, we also become, we've been seduced into a very dependent lifestyle in our American culture.
That's one of the things the chickens taught me. You asked what they were
Oh,
teaching
yeah,
me.
okay.
Is watching them, and I'm thinking how dependent they are on me for their food, and what arrangement I've made with them for what I give to them versus what they give to me, etc. And it hit me one day, that's the arrangement that the corporations have made with us. We are domesticated in this country, extremely domesticated, extremely dependent for our food. If you can't provide your own food, your own water, and your own shelter, what is the first thing you do if you want an animal to come back and keep coming to see you?
Yes.
A rabbit or a
Yes.
dog or a cat
Yes.
or whatever, you feed them.
Right.
And when your food is controlled, what kind of independence can you possibly have? And how do you know what's in it? We know what's in all of our food. The little treat we enjoyed before we started here today,
Which is a
comes
delicious
from
muffin.
here, comes from here or from people we know.
I want to add the other facet that you'd spoken to me about earlier is your own involvement with your community. Things that you both volunteer to do or do to sort of build community locally with your neighbors, let me say that. Tell us a little bit about what you each do.
With our neighbors. That's,
Well, the broadest sense.
well,
You're
no,
looking-
with our
yeah.
neighbors actually is an example because we share a newspaper with our neighbors and we share a
chainsaw.
A chainsaw with our
Okay,
neighbors.
all right.
And we're learning that we don't both need these things, so we'll get them together. And then, so our neighbors are slowly learning to garden and other things as well. So that's been a really rewarding chapter.
Right.
And your involvement with the fire department.
Well, yeah, I'm a local volunteer fireman, but let me back up a little bit. 6 years ago, I was doing my graduate work at New College of California, and Richard Heinberg just happened to be my thesis advisor, and that's how I was introduced into the whole peak oil issue. And that's when we started tossing around the idea of using the Titanic as a metaphor for Western civilization, and which gave me the idea of developing some sort of a homestead academy education experience for people. So that was where some of the ideas were fermented for a while. But when when Karen and I moved up to the Pacific Northwest and found this place with the idea of putting together this education center, and we used the kind of the peak oil banner saying, the sky is falling and so on. So we found there's a lot of there's resistance to it, and so we had to fall back and say, wait a minute, the message is not being well received. There's a lot of resistance. How can we repackage it, or how can we approach people where they would be more willing to listen? Then the 2007 hurricane happened here.
Right here.
Right here.
I see.
It's actually twin typhoons, but same thing.
Over 120 mile an hour winds. We lost a lot of the forest was blown down. Roofs flew off. This county was basically out of communication for about 10 days or so. And so there was this huge community awareness that was peaked about, gee, we're really not prepared for this kind of stuff because the cavalry is not going to come and save us. So we need to be a little bit more self-sufficient. So that gives, there's our window of opportunity. If we can have people think about being prepared for an emergency for a week or, a few days, then we've got kind of a foothold.
Then you've
With
got the
the
kind of
community.
resilience that you really want to.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And that's
and
what
less
you're talking about.
dependency on.
Right.
Resilience is the word. If people think of collapse or peak oil as being a point, we're so linear in our thinking. We think that it goes up, and this will have, in our history books, we'll have a certain date to remember that was when oil peaked, or that was when collapse occurred, or whatever. It's not. It's a gradual process. We're in it at the moment. We're watching it happen. So getting prepared for a specific thing that's catastrophic is probably silly. It's not the way things are going to happen. But there are bumps in the road, as Heinberg says also. You have something and then it goes down, and then you have another event in it. And it depends on where you are. If you're in one state, perhaps the state has financial problems that are going to be more catastrophic to the residents or going to affect people in a particular community or whatever, whereas another state adjacent to that one doesn't have the same experience. So there may be an experience in your community. My point is, once that happens, people are afraid. We're naturally afraid, or we're upset, or we're angry, or whatever. When we're any of those things, we're not thinking extremely well. We can't rationalize it and reason and use logic as well in that case. So if people are prepared for at least, at the very minimum, 72 hours, but now FEMA is saying two weeks, they want you prepared for 2 weeks. If you have that base, once again, you can move from that. If you have no base at all, that's when you panic and do silly things and dangerous things and hurtful things to other people sometimes. Heaven forbid that happens out of desperation. But if you don't have that desperation, if you have a base from which to work, so everyone is okay for at least a few days or a few weeks, then you can sit down and talk about, okay, what do we do about this? you know, whatever this is in your particular community.
And here in this last 2 minutes here, did you do that with your community in some way after the 2007 hurricane?
Well, we outreach in a lot of different ways. We tried a lot of different tactics, and one of the several that have paid good dividends for us as far as the community is concerned is I immediately joined the local volunteer fire department.
You were already a member
And,
when
yeah.
the hurricane happened.
When the
but
hurricane
yeah.
happened, so you know that was that sort of one avenue. Another one was Karen immediately following the storm organized a neighborhood emergency preparedness group. It was similar, kind of on the same model as Neighborhood Watch.
Oh, okay.
So that we
But
now,
for emergencies. And
but just for emergencies, so everybody knows where everybody is and who's got certain resources, who
what
has
tools
certain
and
needs.
skills and needs that everybody in the neighborhood has. So if there's another emergency, we know who has to, you know.
Who to help and who's
Right,
got what tools
exactly,
and so on.
exactly.
Fabulous.
And now that we're facing an economic collapse, we felt that we tried to initiate any kind of projects that would help relocalize our community.
I've just taught a course called Cottage Industries and worked with people, and they're talking about collapse. I actually had them watch part of the crash course, Chris Martinson's crash course, and we discussed. I said location, location, location. Well, location in time is just as important as location in space. So we discussed that, and we're talking about making sure that what you're doing contributes to the community in some way that people need, and that you can take back from others, that you can share, thinking outside the box in terms of money. You don't always have to have money. You can do something for someone else, and they can do something for you. And what did you need money for in that transaction?
And that's another component of that dependency syndrome that we've all fallen into, is everybody thinks that everything, especially in the United States, Western capitalism has gotten this idea that everything has been commodified.
Yes.
And the only relationship that we can have with people is through money. We
Well,
don't need money.
It's just that we're going to have to rethink the value of things, and the value is going to be relative to our place in our community and who's there. Again, skills, tools, and needs of the people that we live with. And once you can let go of that, well, I have, you know, a PhD, and so my time is worth this much, and you don't have one, so your time is only worth. Once we can let go of all that, life gets so much simpler and is so much easier to deal with other people, and it's more rewarding too.
Karen, Christopher, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the lifeboat that you are creating. Thank you for helping other people build their lifeboats. And I'm hoping that from this, we're going to have a whole flotilla of
That would be
lifeboats
terrific.
That'd be
everywhere
great.
to meet,
That'd be great.
you know, the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you.
You're watching Peak Moment, locally reliant living for challenging times, and lifeboats as a really fine tool with Christopher and Karen. Join us next time.